Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for Wight, welcoming you to this week's Talking News. I had hoped to say that I am welcoming you from the sunny shores of Devon, as I'm on holiday this week with my two young children. Regretfully, all I can say is I'm welcoming you from the shores of Devon, as it has done nothing, and I mean nothing, but rain all week. Not to be put off, the children have enjoyed so many of the activities. They've been zorbing, whatever that is, high rope adventures, wave machines, surfing, and all sorts. I am pleased to announce, however, that I did beat them at Crazy Golf, despite their attempt at cheating. They give me a verbal description of what the Crazy Golf course looks like to the next hole. I hit the ball as straight as I can, roughly to the distance that they say, and somehow I have actually managed to beat them. Well, on one occasion anyway. Not to be put off by the weather, I did order from Amazon a compendium of games and asked for them to be delivered to the local pickup point at the post office here at Woolacombe. However, this wasn't such a great success story. Apparently, without a driving licence or a passport, I'm not able to collect the parcel. Obviously, a driving licence is never going to happen, and why would I bring my passport to Devon? Despite a 25-minute debate with the lady behind the counter and pleading with her to phone head office, as I had a copy of my passport on my phone, I had my debit card, and I was willing to use my PIN number to prove it was my debit card, she would not budge, and the parcel remains sitting in the depot here at Woolacombe Post Office. Please believe this will result in a letter to the post office. This is simply wrong. Who would bring their passport on holiday going to Devon, and of course none of us will have a driving licence. I did also offer my bus pass, which does have my photograph on it and is issued by the Isle of Wight Council. However, still not enough for this lady. In the words of my children, she is simply a job's worth. Please everybody stay safe and enjoy this week's Talking News. Thank you, Lisa.
Hi, this is Steve reading a story from Isle of Wight Radio, headlined "No self-isolation for double jab people if they come into contact with someone who has tested positive for COVID." Those who have received 2 vaccination doses will no longer have to self-isolate if they come into contact with someone who has tested positive for COVID from August 16th. Making an announcement in the Commons on changes to the government's self-isolation policy, the newly appointed Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, also confirmed self-isolation rules for those aged under 18 will end on the same date. Individuals must allow 2 weeks to pass after having their second jab before they are allowed to be exempt from self-isolating, Mr Javid added. At present, people identified as a close contact of someone who has tested positive for coronavirus will receive an alert from the Test and Trace app or a phone call from a tracer telling them to isolate for 10 days. For those who have only received 1 vaccination or those who have not been vaccinated, the requirement to self-isolate after coming into contact with an infected person will remain in place. And if someone who has received 2 jab test positives for coronavirus, they will still have to isolate for the 10-day period. Mr Javid told MPs the odds have shifted in our favour due to the successful vaccination rollout, which will allow the government to make the self-isolation system more flexible next month, he said. From August 16th, when even more people will have the protection of both doses and when modelling suggests the risks from the virus will be even lower, anyone who is a close contact of a positive case will no longer have to self-isolate if they have been fully vaccinated. If someone gets their second dose just before or just after August 16th, they will need to wait 2 weeks, after which their second jab can take effect and give them these new freedoms. The Health Secretary said the government will advise close contacts of confirmed cases who are fully vaccinated to take a PCR test as soon as possible, adding, "And of course anyone that tests positive will have to self-isolate whether they have had the jab or not." The government hopes the new system will bring an end to the disruption of individuals being made to stay in their homes, in some cases for multiple periods of 10 days. On under 18s, Mr Javid added, "In line with the approach for adults, anyone under the age of 18 who is a close contact of a positive case will no longer have to self-isolate. Instead, they will be given advice about whether they should get tested dependent on their age and will only need to self-isolate if they test positive. These measures will also come into force on the 16th of August ahead of the autumn school term. Earlier on Tuesday, Mr Javid said the NHS Test and Trace programme would be made more proportionate under the changes. He added that it is absolutely right that the government takes a different approach with those who have received both jabs. The Health Secretary's comments come a day after Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced that almost all COVID rules will be ditched as part of the final step of the roadmap for lifting lockdown restrictions in England. This includes limits on the number of people who can meet together, legal requirements on wearing face masks and social distancing in pubs and bars. However, the PM did not announce any changes to the government's self-isolation policy in his update. The last step of the government's roadmap is due to take place on July 19th, subject to 4 key tests being met, with a final decision on whether to go ahead to be taken in a week's time following a review of the latest data. The Prime Minister wants to move away from ministerial edicts for managing the coronavirus pandemic. Instead, people in England will be encouraged to use their personal judgment on the risks of infection, with the Prime Minister wishing to see a new way of living with the virus. But Labour have accused the government of being reckless by aiming to remove the majority of measures in 2 weeks' time, while Mr Johnson was criticised for scrapping legal requirements on face masks.
This is Chris, reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Isle of Wight Council considering £60,000 Southampton City of Culture bid. The Isle of Wight will have to fork out £60,000 if it joins Southampton's 2025 City of Culture bid. Councillors will meet next week to weigh up whether a successful bid would be value for money. The ambitious bid, agreed by Southampton City Council in 2019, would see long-term economic benefits, not only to the city but to the wider region, including the island, according to the Cabinet report. Other benefits could include increased visitor numbers to the island, increased profile in local and national media of the island as a cultural destination, increased Arts Council funding committed to island cultural organisations, increased participation in cultural activities by residents in the island's most deprived communities. The Council is being asked to make an initial financial contribution of £10,000 to support the bid and associated activity. Should the bid be successful, a further £50,000 paid over 5 years would be committed from the Council's regeneration budget. Councillor Julie Jones-Evans, who leads on regeneration and business development, said, "The island strongly values its cultural heritage and the role of cultural and creative industries as a key area of future economic opportunity, especially as the island recovers from the pandemic. The island is already home to landmark cultural events, such as Cows Week and the Isle of Wight Festival, and the cultural history of the island is a major draw for island visitors. The designation of Ireland as a UNESCO biosphere in 2019 was also recognition of the importance of the island's cultural life as a contributor to quality of life. All these factors contribute to the island as a significant partner to the Southampton 2025 bid, helping improve its competitiveness when set against other cities and regions. The island's cultural offer is a key part of the Council's regeneration strategy. It's thought City of Culture status would provide opportunities for young people, raise the profile of the region nationally and internationally, as well as helping to address social needs, using culture as a catalyst to bring communities together and drive change."
Proposals to reshape Ryde Esplanade branded a stepping stone for regeneration. From Isle of Wight Radio, Iona. Proposals to reshape Ryde Esplanade as part of a £10 million project have been branded as a stepping stone of regeneration for the area. In a joint bid between Hampshire, Portsmouth and the Isle of Wight Council, the money's been provided by the government through the Transforming Cities Fund to improve connectivity throughout the region. Focusing on the gateway into Ryde, Wight Link, South Western Railway and the Isle of Wight Council are all introducing plans to rejuvenate the area by changing the road entrance to the pier, the Ryde bus station layout and a dedicated pedestrian and cycleway up the pier. With the government funding came a number of conditions, though, to achieve value for money when investing in the land. The Council's Strategic Manager for Regeneration, Infrastructure and Transport Capital Programme, Dave Newton, said, "Fundamentals that anchor the current proposals," Mr Newton said, including the scheme that will see most buses leaving Ryde via George Street to counteract the safety concerns of buses reversing. He said, "The funding is from the Department for Transport, so this element is very much transport focused and we want to get as much value out of that as we can for the public realm." As part of the proposals for the new Ryde interchange, the public toilets and cafe will be demolished and replaced with a new entranceway into the pier. Getting the proposals right was a fine balance, and Mr Newton said, unless there was something found which would make the scheme entirely unworkable, it would go ahead, although tweaks identified through the current running consultation could be made. He said, "This stage is the feasibility design, and what we've found makes the project work, and the feedback will help us design the next level of detail that's very much focused on the public realm. We'll hear all commentary and move forward." There's always going to be compromise and wide views, so we cannot make everybody happy, but the fundamentals of this to create a great opportunity funded by the Department for Transport to improve sustainable travel, enhance the public realm and get much better pedestrian prioritisation in the area than there currently is, which is what we set out to do. If we get feedback in an improved manner, we will listen to it.
This is Brian reading an article from On the Wight. 600 more police officers by 2023 and better education to reduce crime, says Police and Crime Commissioner. As well as prioritising 600 more police officers by the end of 2023, the new Police and Crime Commissioner says that in order to prevent and reduce crime, we should be educating children from the top end of primary school. Police and Crime Commissioner Donna Jones has spoken at her first Police and Crime Panel meeting on Friday, 2nd of July, about her vision for Hampshire and Isle of Wight to be two of the safest counties in the country to live in, and the priority actions she will be taking as part of her police and crime plan. Commissioner Jones said, "My vision as your Commissioner, as a parent and as a citizen, is that Hampshire and Isle of Wight are places children and elderly people can walk the streets without fear. People have told me unequivocally in a crime survey I ran last year that they want more police on the streets. More police means more detection and prevention, and my number one priority is to have 600 more officers by the end of 2023. But it's not only about having extra officers. If you don't see them, people don't feel safer. We need to make sure we do everything we can to free up officers from bureaucracy so they can spend more time out and visible on the streets." The PCC went on to say, "In addition to increased visibility of policing, I also want to make it easier to report crime and to make the way crime reports are dealt with more customer service focused. And so there will be a review of the 101 service and alternative ways to report to the police. Anti-social behaviour is increasing and is something that I am hearing about regularly from residents and local representatives. I am listening and taking action. On Friday, I did a walk around in Romsey with Caroline Noakes MP and local officers in response to concerns in the area, and on a larger scale, I am setting up an anti-social behaviour task force to bring together the organisations locally that need to work together to tackle antisocial behaviour, because it's not just a police matter. One of the best and easiest ways to prevent and reduce crime and therefore levels of harm is if you can stop young people from becoming criminals in the first place. We need to not criminalise children, and we need to be educating children at the top end of primary. The Hampshire Police and Crime Panel is responsible for scrutinising and supporting the Police and Crime Commissioner. This includes reviewing the Police and Crime Plan draft and the decisions and actions of the Commissioner. Commissioner Jones said, "I'm very much looking forward to working with the panel, hearing their views, the feedback they have received from the people they represent, and to including panel members in my work out in the community. There's been criticism in the past that people don't understand what a commissioner does and that the public never see them. I intend to change that. By the end of my term of office, 3 years, I want every person to know what I do and how I can or have helped them. It is a key part of my role." Chair of the Police and Crime Panel, Councillor Simon Bound, said, "I look forward to working alongside the new Police and Crime Commissioner and reviewing the new draft Police and Crime Plan, ensuring it serves the best interests of the community."
Hello, this is Steve reading a story from On the Wight, headlined, New Homeless Assessment Hub Opens on the Isle of Wight. The hub will provide somewhere for up to 6 weeks for vulnerable people to stay whilst they receive the necessary support to rebuild their lives. A new homeless assessment hub will open its doors next week, providing specialist support to those most in need. The assessment hub will help vulnerable people avoid sleeping rough by providing a roof over their head, providing tailored support to help them rebuild their lives, and support them to access the other vital services they need, such as support with finding employment and access to any healthcare they need. People will stay at the service for a relatively short period of time, around 6 weeks, during which the intensive support they receive will help make them ready to move into the next stage of their housing journey en route to securing a permanent home of their own. Named Howard House in memory of Howard Derham, who tragically died while homeless in 2017, the centre is being run by experienced homelessness charity the Salvation Army. The hub will be part of the island's homelessness pathway and referral service and is a key part of the Isle of Wight Council's drive to end rough sleeping. Councillor Ian Stevens, who is responsible for housing needs, said, "Howard House will provide a safe place from which individuals can start to rebuild and live their lives. These are people who need to be treated with dignity, care and respect, but they may have been overwhelmed with adverse events and circumstances happening in their lives. The new facility will help to focus provision around each individual person, which is the best way to understand their needs and to help set a path to permanent accommodation for them. The Council has invested around £500,000 in the new centre, with a further £362,000 secured from the Government. The major refurbishment of the building, the former Barton Primary School, was undertaken by island firm Trevor Jones Contracting Limited. Matthew Smith, Assistant Regional Manager for the Salvation Army's Homelessness Services, said, "We're pleased to be the provider of this new and innovative assessment hub, where our focus will be on preventing rough sleeping and reducing homelessness. We have been working with the Council and other agencies to tackle homelessness for a number of years. Having been part of the strategic planning for the new pathway on the island to reduce homelessness, we are excited to see Howard House come to fruition. As well as providing a safe environment, we will work collaboratively with agencies on the island, offering an individual approach to help people take the next step out of homelessness."
This is Chris, reading an article from the Island Echo. £67 million project could see railway extended from Sandown to Newport. Island Line could be extended from Sandown to Newport at an initial cost of £67 million under initial plans submitted to the Department for Transport by the Isle of Wight Council. The authority, supported by Island MP Bob Seeley, is seeking government support from the Restoring Your Railway programme to further develop the case for reinstating some of the island's lost rail links. The project will aim to reinstate the disused railway line between the Island Line and Newport via Blackwater, providing a frequent, fast and reliable railway service from Ryde Pier Head to the island's county town, albeit following an indirect route. The original suggestion was utilising the Isle of Wight steam railway track from Smallbrook Junction to Wootton and extending it to Newport. But the business case submitted by the council now looks at reinstating a railway track from Sandown to Blackwater instead. The plan of utilising the steam railway has been ruled out on cost and feasibility grounds. Extending the existing Island Line to Newport via Blackwater has been identified as the most viable element of the project to be progressed as an initial phase at an estimated infrastructure cost of £67 million. However, the project could cost up to £110 million, with annual running costs of 3 trains per hour of up to £3.2 million. The proposal would utilise the former Sandown to Newport Railway, the track bed of which remains very largely intact, to link the existing Island Line to Newport. Existing cycling and walking routes would be retained and enhanced alongside any new rail infrastructure. A new north-facing junction would be created south of Sandown train station. 3 trains per hour would run with an end-to-end journey of between 21 and 26 minutes. The new section could be built as a hybrid light rail, semi-segregated railway with battery-powered tram trains or modified Class 484 trains. Future phases of the project could also enable an extension of the service between Ryde Pier Head and Ventnor, improving accessibility for residents and supporting Ventnor to reach its full potential as a visitor destination. The cost of reinstating the railway from Shanklin to Ventnor via Wroxall could cost around £46 million, with annual running costs of £1.2 million. Councillor Phil Jordan, Cabinet Member for Transport and Infrastructure, has said extending the island's rail network has significant potential to boost the local economy while helping to ease congestion and reduce carbon emissions. He said, "Reinstating this rail link is vital to supporting the economic growth of our island and to help reduce carbon emissions. It will provide a viable alternative to private car travel by improving journey times and connectivity. We've submitted a strong case and hope the project will be successful in moving to the next stage. The government has previously signalled support for our ambitions, and we're hopeful they'll help us progress this scheme further." In May 2020, the council received up to £50,000 from the Restoring Your Railways programme to prepare a feasibility study for restoring former rail links between Newport and Ryde and Ventnor and Shanklin. Then, in December 2020, the council appointed a consortium of organisations led by the Centre for Economics and Business Research, CEBR Limited, to prepare a strategic outline business case, SOBC, an early feasibility study and supporting work. Bob Seeley, MP, has said, "This bid is an opportunity to bring about major change and regenerate our towns. It is a vision designed to unlock the island's growth and development potential by using transport to connect people to businesses, jobs and education. Restoring branch lines between our two main towns would enable greater integration with cross-Solent transport providers, encourage low-carbon travel, bring people closer to town centres and encourage a holistic approach to active and public transport. By breaking the cycle of unsustainable car-dependent greenfield development, new transport links into town centres could support a recycling culture of housing within our towns and villages. Should the SOBC be approved by the government, then the project will progress to the next stage, which is the preparation of a more detailed outline business case. It is initially planned that the project would get underway in 2026, 5 years from now.
Town Council told to work out next steps by end of July or lose Ryde Town Hall. From Isle of Wight Radio, Iona. An ultimatum has been handed to Ryde Town Council over the future of Ryde Town Hall, and they have until the end of the month to make a decision. Despite discussions with the owner to buy the historic building, another offer has been put on the table, which means the Town Council have to work out what its next steps will be, or they risk losing their chance to own the building. Speaking at a Town Council meeting on Monday the 5th of July, Mayor of Ryde, Michael Lilly, said an extraordinary meeting will be held next Wednesday, July the 14th, to discuss what to do, following the delivery of a feasibility and viability study. Funding from Historic England was provided through the Heritage Action Zone to commission the study of the Town Hall and Theatre, but with the caveat of the study would be made public. Councillor Lilly said the study will be available over the next week. At a meeting, there'll be a presentation and decision for us to go to the next stage of purchasing or starting the process with the owner. The owner's got another offer of the building and has said, after giving us 2 years to come up with an offer, he's not willing to go further than July with discussions. The council voted last November to agree a 3-year lease of the building with an option to buy it. The building's been empty since 2013, when the Isle of Wight Council sold the venue to a private developer, but in recent months the hall and theatre have been broken into and vandalised. The Town Council previously applied for £7 million of funding from the Lottery Heritage to restore the building, but were unsuccessful, one reason being that they did not own it. After yesterday's meeting, Councillor Jordan said they're now finally in a place to bring forward a motion asking the Town Council to buy the building. He said, "We have seen drafts of the study and we know once it's been restored, the building is able to sustain itself going forward into the future." Councillor Jordan said the study will help the council apply for grant funding to help return the building to the community at mixed leisure use. If the council take on the building, Councillor Jordan said it would see the Town Council's offices put back there, and other interested parties like the NHS and CCG could also occupy the space.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Carisbrooke Castle's walled garden, one of the most popular countrywide. Carisbrooke Castle's walled garden has been listed as the second most popular in the United Kingdom by TV and podcast maker History Hit. The Princess Beatrice Garden has grabbed its spot on the list after Instagram data was collated and published. The garden has successfully fought off gardens in London, Dover and Worcester to gain its place. Princess Beatrice became Governor of the Isle of Wight in 1896 following the death of her husband, Prince Henry of Battenberg, who had previously held the position. Following her appointment as Governor, she undertook several renovations at Carisbrooke Castle and began to cultivate her own private garden. Beatrice's garden was the inspiration for the current garden, which was installed in 2009 by award-winning garden designer Chris Beardshaw. With a fountain in its centre, the garden can be enjoyed both on the ground and from above on the wall walk, where its intriguing design becomes even more apparent.
Hi, this is Steve reading a story from On the Wight, headlined James Bond submarine finds new home on the Isle of Wight. Bond film fanatics might recognise this submarine from the 1999 film starring Pierce Brosnan, The World Is Not Enough. It's not often you see a submarine parked in the ferry terminal waiting to come to the Isle of Wight, but that's what happened yesterday afternoon, which was Monday, to news on the Wight reader Leo Harverson as he queued to get on the Red Funnel Ferry at Southampton. We hear that the submarine is an original James Bond prop used in the 1999 film The World Is Not Enough. The sub was heading to a secret location on the Isle of Wight. We've been asked to keep stum for the moment on where and what it will be used for, but we'll let you know once we get the all clear.
This is Chris, reading an article from On the Wight. Mental health support service to expand across all schools from 2022. 1 in 8 children and young people aged 5 to 19 have a diagnosable mental health problem, with half of all problems emerging before the age of 14. A pilot service that currently supports the well-being of young people aged 5 to 19 in 8 island schools will expand to all schools from next year. The Isle of Wight NHS Trust, Barnardo's and the Isle of Wight Youth Trust have been working in partnership to deliver the new UK government initiative in England, mental health support teams in schools and colleges across the island. This mental health support team service was launched locally in January 2021, and in its initial development phase, it is working with 4 primary host schools and 4 secondary host schools. Primary host schools include Oakfield Primary, Barton Primary, 9 Acres Primary, Medina House School. Secondary host schools include Cowes Enterprise College, the Isle of Wight College, the Bay, and the Island Learning Centre. The development phase involved collaboration in designing the service with the support teams, becoming accessible to children and young people from May 2021. The practitioners offer early support with evidence-based interventions, including cognitive behaviour therapy, CBT, to treat mild to moderate mental health conditions such as low mood, stress, anxiety and challenging behaviour. From January 2022, this service will become fully accessible to all schools across the island. Children and young people will be able to access support from education and mental health practitioners, EMHPs, to supplement the existing support already in place for children and young people aged 4 to 18 years old. In addition to working with individual children and young people, their families and carers, the MHST service will also work with school and college staff, offering training and consultation to support and develop a collaborative whole school approach to mental health and well-being. For children and young people in participating schools and colleges, they can access this service by referral from their school's mental health lead. The MHST service has 3 main aims. 2. Deliver evidence-based interventions for mild to moderate mental health issues. To support the senior mental health lead in the school or college to introduce and develop their whole school or college approach. Also, to give timely advice to school and college staff working with existing services for children and young people to get the right support and stay in education. This will include working with CAHMS, who support children and young people who have more severe, complex or persistent disorders. Helen Figgins, Service Manager for Children's Mental Health at Isle of Wight NHS Trust, said, "We are delighted that children and young people will benefit from this initiative to provide additional mental health and well-being support in our island schools and colleges. We are collaborating with existing service providers as part of an integrated approach to ensure the MHST service is responsive, fits local needs, and is based on an understanding of the needs of the children and young people on the island. We are also committed to engaging children and young people, their parents, carers in the development and setting up of this service to ensure it's tailored to reflect their needs. This should lead to a more positive experience for children and young people, their families and carers, with improved knowledge and confidence in dealing with mental health issues. In England today, approximately 1 in 8 children and young people aged 5 to 19 have a diagnosable mental health problem, with half all problems emerging before the age of 14. There is clear evidence that early intervention can prevent problems escalating and can have major social benefits. Roland Wight, Assistant Principal of the Isle of Wight College, said, "The Isle of Wight College is delighted to have been selected to host an education mental health practitioner, EMHP. This new role will be invaluable in supporting young people's mental health on the island. Our EMHP, Ella Craig and Callum Sharp, are already establishing themselves as valuable members of the college community, and we look forward to working with them to support college students. The MHST service is funded by NHS England, Health Education England and partners, and designed to improve children and young people's mental health and emotional well-being. If you have any questions or would like further information about the service, then please email the MHST at iownt.mhst@nhs.net.
Application for Ryde's Westridge Farm to become community asset from Isle of Wight Radio, Iona. A farm in danger of becoming 475 houses in Ryde is the latest subject of a value of community asset application after the Town Council threw its support behind the plans. On Monday night, a motion was approved by Ryde Town Council with 13 votes in favour and 2 abstentions to support the idea of Westridge Farm becoming a community farm and apply to the Isle of Wight Council for it to be listed as an asset of community value. Putting forward the motion, Deputy Mayor of Ryde, Jenna Sabine, said it was heartbreaking to see the personal side of the development, with the Holiday family potentially losing their home and business, despite signing a lease back in the 1960s for 3 generations of farmers to be on the land. Councillor Sabine said, "The Holidays have already lost fields to development and have to look onto 88 homes that have been built, and they don't want to see any more. They've invested a lot of money, and I think we should be doing everything to protect the family and the green space. I understand we need houses, but they need to be somewhere else." The site at the top of Ryde is subject to a yet-to-be-determined planning application submitted by island developers Captiva Homes for 475 houses, some affordable, as well as a doctor's surgery and cafe. Ryde Town Council as a body has supported the retention of the land and objected to the planning application, which is thought to be heading to the Isle of Wight Council's planning committee soon. If the council were to be successful with its application, it would join other noticeable Ryde landmarks as community assets like Ryde Arena. An asset of community value means when the landowner wants to sell the property, the community has 6 months to pull together an offer. Councillor Michael Lilly, Mayor of Ryde, said the family had been successful in applying to the Plunkett Foundation, a national body for agricultural and rural development, to support communities exercising their rights. A mentor's been funded by the foundation to keep the Holidays pulled together as a plan for the future, making the farm viable in the form of a couple running a community farm in Shropshire. As the last dairy farm in Ryde, Councillor Lilly said it's important to retain the farm as it would be an important educational resource for children, having the only automated milking system on the island. Speaking after the meeting, Councillor Lisa Carter, who along with Councillor Sabine fronted the motion, said she understands there is a housing shortage on the island, but having a community farm and supporting the family who have had the rug pulled from under them is important. Councillor Carter said the farm wants to develop, providing winter tourism, attracting mainland schools, as well as community events such as an outdoor cinema and milk vending machine. Councillor Sabine said it would not just be about the educational side of things, but also a source of local produce, supplying milk and other items to the town.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Bryston Community Library marks a decade since it was saved from closure. Volunteers in Bryston are celebrating 10 years since they managed to rescue the community library from being closed with a one-off event this weekend. In 2011, the Isle of Wight Council attempted to close 9 libraries across the island, but volunteers stepped in to rescue the one in Bryston and several others across the island. Libraries in Shanklin, Knighton, East Cowes, Bembridge and Bryston are community libraries that were rescued by locals. Now, volunteers in Bryston are coming together to mark a decade since it was saved with an event this Saturday involving tea, cake and prizes. In the afternoon, the leader of the Isle of Wight Council, Laura P.C. Wilcox, will award prizes to the winning students at Bryston Primary who've taken part in a poster competition. Nick England, Deputy Lord Lieutenant, will cut the anniversary cake made by well-known local baker Ruth, and local authors Jane Good and Rosie Burke will present the library with a copy of their most recent books. Jane's is a diary of her life in Bryston during the lockdown, with photographs taken by her husband, and Rosie's Compton from the Skies to the Seas is described as a love letter to the landscape. Norma Bradley is a volunteer and a member of the management committee, and she told Isle of Wight Radio, "We felt very strongly that there should be a library in Bryston because we are a very rural community and we love our library and wanted to keep it. We think it is great that we've managed to run the library and keep it going. That is quite a celebration and something worth celebrating. If you happen to be passing, we'd love to see you. We're having a cake that has been made by a local woman called Ruth, and everyone in Bryston knows Ruth, and she makes very good cakes. We hope we can keep the numbers below 30 because it's going to be difficult to send people away, and would be lovely to see anyone." The Isle of Wight Library Service supplies the library in North Street with books, and during the pandemic, the library operated a click and collect service. It meant islanders could reserve the books online for free and collect them on Saturday. They were also delivered to the doorstep of islanders by volunteers. Norma added she and other volunteers were very proud to be nominated for the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service in 2019, and the island's Lord Lieutenant Susie Sheldon complimented volunteers for their outstanding work in the community. Helen Ockenden, volunteer coordinator, told Isle of Wight Radio, "Some of our volunteers have been involved from the start, and some are newcomers to the village. As well as the obvious library work, other volunteers give their time to creating imaginative displays within the building, to keeping the gardens looking lovely, or to applying themselves to fundraising activities. But whatever the task, between us all, we have given thousands upon thousands of hours simply because we love it." And not to overlook a vital role of being a volunteer, being up for a chat, either with the locals who pop their head in just to say hello, or with the many visitors we welcome each year. So Saturday's anniversary celebration is a thank you all to those who support this lovely village asset. Socially distanced tea and cake for our wonderful volunteers, both past and present, and the local councillors who provide our legal backup. The site also plays a part in the popular Bryston Christmas Tree Festival, but the event has been cancelled for a second year because of the pandemic.
Hello, this is the second part of the Talking News, read by Pauline and
Fran.
And we start with a Wight Link letter.
With the lifting of restrictions on the 19th of July, Sight for Wight is reopening to our volunteers and members and would like as many of you to come back to see us. Volunteers are welcome to a welcome back catch-up with coffee and cake on Monday the 19th at 10:30am here at Millbrook House. Coffee and chat mornings are restarting once again on Wednesday the 21st at Millbrook House, starting at 10:30. £1 for coffee and cake. Thursday Mix and Mingle are starting on the 22nd at 10:30am. This week will be a special occasion when a new bench in memory of our long-standing volunteer Mel Barnes will be unveiled, followed by tea and cake. Transport is available but must be pre-booked in advance. If you require more information on any of the above activities, please do not hesitate to contact the office on 522205.
And now we start with the letters.
Looking at Wight Link's many millions of pounds, from Carl Hunter, Shanklin. I am grateful for Mr. Seeley's open reply published in the county press on the 18th of June. Overall, it's clear he acknowledges and recognises the issues islanders face with the ferry companies. However, the first thing that caught my eye was why Wight Link needed millions of pounds of public money to avoid bankruptcy. I have looked at Wight Link's accounts covering the past 4 years, and they show over £59 million net profit. In the same period, over £50 million, 85% of Wight Link's profits over the same period, was paid in dividends to Wight Link's parent company, Arca Shipping Limited. The accounts also referred in 2006 Wight Link was subject to a restructuring that created a substantial reserve fund of over 101 million. The latest information shows that figure is now down to under £40 million. All this indicates Wight Link Limited is a very lucrative company, being stripped of cash by its parent company. Hence, Wight needed to take taxpayers' money to stay afloat. If some of those profits were managed more responsibly and retained by Wight Link, there would be no need to take taxpayers' money. The one important matter to be clear on is net profit comes after all other expenses on a company's balance sheet, after loan repayments, tax and capital expenditure. I also struggled with the statement made by Wight Link's CEO, Keith Greenfield, in last week's county press: profits are needed to fund capital expenditure on new ferries and infrastructure, so it's hardly surprising that Wight Link needs higher profit than other businesses. I believe this statement to be misleading, given Wight Link's accounts clearly show that the vast majority of Wight Link's net profits have not been used for capital expenditure, but instead have been and continue to be a dividend payout. Wight Link's slogan is "Part of Island Life," but aside from creating some jobs for islanders, if all profits are leaving for distant shores, what is the value of Wight Link to the island? If it wasn't for island businesses creating a desire to visit, ferry operators would have significantly less revenue coming in. Where is the social responsibility in putting some of those profits back into the island's economy? Therefore, I question Mr. Seeley's statement that the current owners are better than the previous owners. It's hard not to conclude anything other than Wight Link is using us as their cash cow. I am open to be proven otherwise. In the ensuing days after my letter, I heard from many islanders who had much to say on the debate. There were various viewpoints. but one recurring theme was quick to emerge: the cost, but not just the financial cost. High ferry fares are leading to a social cost by restricting some families in our community from accessing the mainland, especially in the summer holidays and half terms. It was sad to hear how some islanders have regularly missed out on important family events simply because they could not afford the ferry fare.
Excuse me, straight away I can hear the likely argument from some of you who say we choose to live on the island and if we don't like it, move, or those who say the ferry operators are businesses and have to make money. In some ways I agree with these people. There is a sacrifice for living on this beautiful island, and yes, businesses need to make money. The problem arises when the sacrifice is too great and the cost disproportionately high, and I think we have arrived at that point. The standard quick retort to this is comparing the cost of a return journey from the 1970s and 80s, when the routes were publicly owned, and concluding in relative terms the fares are about the same. However, as Mr. Seeley stated, it's only comparative when comparing the bulk buying of tickets today with single returns purchased over the counter back then. I'd suggest this makes it incomparable, given most islanders don't purchase ferry tickets this way, nor can many afford the outlay of bulk buying. Therefore, I feel it's not a real argument for historical parity. Regardless, I never think this is a worthy argument in the first place, given, even if it was just as costly back then, it doesn't make it right. Is it not better to try and recognise and appreciate what islanders are experiencing at the hands of our ferry companies here and now? Using my circumstances as an example, every year in the summer holidays, excluding 2020, I drive my children to London to visit family. This year I will be travelling on August the 7th and returning on August the 14th. A standard return on Wight Link, leaving at 9:20 a.m. and returning at 1:40 a.m. is £229. Unless I want to catch a 6:40 a.m. ferry and return on a 10 p.m. ferry for £167.50p. Conversely, various other departure times take the price up to £263.50. This is where these frankly monstrous ferry fares impede some families from the freedom to travel, and why the social cost is too high. Is it then the case that our ferry operators are not concerned with serving all members of our community and restricting reasonable rights of passage to a proportion of islanders? And so, in response to Mr. Seeley's belief that Wight Link management understands their wider social responsibility to the island, I'm afraid for me there is too much evidence that points to the contrary. However, Mr. Seeley's letter details a list of improvements he would like to see, including a better pricing policy to help some islanders access the mainland when they need to. Wight Link's accounts indicate there is ample room for a better balance to make this a reality. Some profit could be allocated to a social benefit fund, subsidising or reducing island fares while still generating a healthy return. I also support our ferry companies committing to a public service obligation showing their intentions to serve our community rather than making tens of millions from it. This leaves the question, what can be done? A fixed link, perhaps? Whether you are for or against a fixed link, it could easily be 20 years away, if ever, and by then we'll all have flying Teslas anyway. I'm behind Mr. Seeley's desire for our ferries to be publicly owned. Perhaps there is a case for including our ferry links in the Great British Railway Initiative, a public company shortly to be implemented by the government that would take over the planning of train services, manage fares and ticketing. The trains will still be operated by private companies. A similar setup that regulates Wight Link and Red Funnel in the interest of the public could provide a solution while holding ferry operators to account.
It's a national one-horse race from Duncan Fraser, Cows. With Matt Hancock withdrawing, the good news is that his darling favourite to win the head of the NHS Stakes, Baroness Dido Harding, is now a non-starter and is trotting back to her stables. all bets have been cancelled as to which other lame old nag will now be selected by the Tories to be their front runner and will amble past the finishing post in this classic national one-horse race for novice apprentices. E-scooter confusion from T. McClure, Sandown. If Beryl scooters are legal on the roads, why aren't privately owned e-scooters legal? I mean, it's not like company cars are legal, but privately owned cars aren't. Lucky to live here, thank you. From Christine Cave, Carisbrook. I think that I am very lucky to live on the Isle of Wight, so I want to thank all the doctors, our hospital, dentists and volunteers at the vaccination stations, shop workers, delivery people, postmen and women, council workers, refuse collectors, teachers, neighbours, everyone who has tried to keep us safe and continue to do so against this terrible virus that we have been battling with. Thank you to all those who care. What's the explanation? From David Jacques, Bride. Can anyone explain the sudden rash of roadworks right at the start of the holiday season when those responsible had the whole of winter to get these jobs done? Visibility is now improved. From Neil Clifford, Cowes. I would like to thank Island Roads for their prompt response in cutting back the overgrown and enhancing visibility at the junction of Forest and White House roads.
From Matthew Larkham of Lake. Alternative suggestion for e-scooter bay. I'm writing to express my concerns regarding the proposed location at Lake Hill for the Beryl e-scooter bay. Although we'd be able to see this from our flat, this is not my main concern. My main issue is the junction that joins Lake Hill on the bend. It's difficult at the best of times to pull out from this junction in both directions, but mainly if you turn right towards Sandown Road. I'm worried it will cause unnecessary obstructions and distractions to drivers when users are gathered in usually small groups trying to download the app and use the scooters. It's also an extremely busy road, and having them positioned right by the main road is not safe, especially as traffic regularly builds up at certain points of the day due to the pedestrian crossing, stops, junctions and traffic lights. In the other example on Beryl's letter, the e-scooters are clearly positioned away from the road next to a wall, which would be much safer for the public and those using the e-scooters. A better position would be next to the bicycle railings and benches on the other side of the junction near the public toilet. The path is much wider, so everyone using the path will have more space. Also, the scooters and users will not be in anyone's way, nor will they cause obstruction or distraction here. There is also a loading bay, which would also be useful for Beryl staff to access the scooter bay when required. I hope my comments help Beryl finalise a safe location for the e-scooters to be launched in Lake.
Desperate measures from F. Harvey, Northwood. My friend recently became concerned about a medical condition that wasn't improving, so tried to make an appointment to see a GP at Cowes Medical Centre. Unfortunately, despite trying on numerous occasions, they were unable to get through on the telephone, so they went in person to make an appointment, but were turned away at the door and told to go online. They tried going online, but couldn't make contact. In frustration and locked in a catch-22 getting nowhere, they decided to see a doctor privately, who saw them immediately at a cost of £150, prescribing medication that cost a further £70. Presumably, Cowes Medical Centre is partially funded on the basis of the number of patients they have on their books. I don't know whether receiving money for services you are not providing constitutes fraud, but I have suggested my friend sends the bill for the £220 they were forced to spend to Cowes Medical Centre for a refund.
From Janet Hart of Freshwater. I won't use ferry lift again. I read with interest the plight of the passengers being stuck in the lift on the Red Funnel ferry. This is not the first time this has happened recently. On an evening crossing from Southampton to Cowes on June the 6th, I experienced the same, although I was only stuck for 7 or 8 minutes. Because of a herniated disc in my back, I had to go in the lift. I was on my own, my husband having walked up the stairs to find a seat in the lounge. The lift started, but the door would not open when I reached the next floor. Despite pushing the alarm button, nothing happened. I was beginning to be worried when the lift started going down again. When the door opened at the car deck level again, there were 2 red funnel employees standing at the door. One of them said it was okay now and to try it again, which I did. At no time did I hear an alarm bell ringing. My husband was unaware that I was stuck and was about to come to look for me when I appeared. When we reached Cowes, I refused to go in the lift and took ages descending the stairs, holding up the passengers behind because my mobility was limited. I did not receive an apology, neither was I offered a seat in the signature lounge as the other trapped passengers were. Hopefully this problem will now have been sorted, although I will not be using the lift again on my next crossing, since I do not wish to repeat that experience. I will walk up the stairs and people behind will just have to wait.
Clarifying playground funding from Alison Child, Chairman, and Gareth Hughes, Clerk, God's Hill Parish Council. God's Hill Parish Council would like to correct misleading and inaccurate information as contained in a letter from Derek Wood, County Press, 2nd of July. The proposed children's playground at Central Mead in God's Hill is being totally financed from local fundraising activity and grant funding from a lottery application. The proceeds of the sale of the former village hall are held by the Village Hall charity and are earmarked for the provision of a replacement community hall facility, which is a charity commission requirement. We are most disappointed in the inaccurate information provided by Mr. Wood, which has caused some anxiety and upset to those hard-working volunteers who have given so much time and effort in raising monies on behalf of the God's Hill Children's and Young People's Charity, who are the providers of the proposed playground.
And from Roger Bell of Dorchester in Dorset. I wrote an email to Keith Greenfield of Wight on June the 23rd and have not received any response at all. I wonder if by possibly including it in your paper I might get some feedback from Wight or any other interested party. It said, "Dear Mr. Greenfield, I realise that the non-running of one of your ferries is probably unavoidable, but I do not understand why we, being booked on the St Clair, which is being prioritised for car use, should be shunted off our original book time of 3:40 p.m. and transferred to 1 at 1 a.m. on Saturday. This is unacceptable and has caused a lot of stress on top of the disappointment of a missed much-needed break at Warner's Bembridge. Additionally, we booked a visit to Osborne House and 2 nights in a Portsmouth hotel for a visit to the historic dockyard, all of which we now need to cancel and attempt refunds. We are of the belief that if your apologies are sincere, some compensation, on top of the refunded Warner's holiday cost, is due from Wight.
You can't take politics out of local, from Steve Sheridan Ride. I read with interest the column last Friday, 2nd of July, by the new leader of the Isle of Wight Council, Councillor Laura P.C. Wilcox. It was good to hear about the forthcoming consultation on a new island plan and the commitment to resolve the situation with the floating bridge. I look forward to reading more in due course. However, I was concerned to read the leader's suggestion that these and other things they were acting on were made possible because they were taking the politics out of local government. This seemed to me to be a somewhat peculiar statement. There are many different dictionary definitions of politics, but they generally refer to collective decision-making, achieving and using power or governance, and allocating resources. Will Councillor P.C. Wilcox and her colleagues not be doing these things? Does Councillor P.C. Wilcox not regard herself as a politician? She has been chosen by the residents of Cowes Medina to represent them, and then by her council colleagues to provide the political leadership to a local authority. Let us not forget that 5 members of her alliance group stood for election as official candidates of registered political parties. Having a coalition involving representatives of 3 political parties, along with independents who stood to offer an alternative to other registered political parties, means that they are politicians elected to make political decisions. I think it is disingenuous to seek to give the public the impression that you have taken the politics out of local government, when this simply isn't possible. This administration will face the same challenges as previous ones. They will have to balance the budget, and to do this, political choices will have to be made. I wish the Alliance Group well in their political deliberations.
And one final letter from a disappointed traveller. This is Ian Pratt of Ryde. Not having been on a ferry with my family since last October, I was pleased to be able to book a week away with our eldest son in early July. The Fishbourne ferry was altered by Wight Link from 10 a.m. to 10:40 a.m. OK. The return was altered from 7:40 p.m. to 3:40 a.m. the next day. Totally unacceptable. When can Wight Link be brought to book for this shambles?
Children need to handle real cash. From Peter Shreve, Assistant District Secretary, Isle of Wight National Education Unit. I refer to the article Workshops to Help Children About Money, County Press, 2nd of July. As a teacher, I recall doing the same in key skills lessons, tutor time, and even foreign language lessons, and utilising pretend coins and notes, both domestic and foreign, before moving on to cheques, cards, hire purchase and mortgages. However, a growing trend towards a cashless society and the pandemic supercharging the increase in contactless payment-only signs have become common at checkout tills. Studies have shown children form their money habits as early as 7 years old, as their gaze fixates on watching parents and others make monetary transactions. But what happens when physical cash cannot be used? Certainly, I have not used any physical money since the start of this pandemic. Will children have the same level of engagement learning, watching someone touch a card to a card reader? Will physical money end up as something only to be collected, like a rare book or football stickers? A danger area exists in the digital world. The virtual world and the real world can become seamlessly entwined. Look at the hazards of confusing the virtual world of gameplay with the real world of money. Look at online gambling activity among young people. To make lessons really effective, I suspect, we may need the physical touch of real money to help embed understanding and slowly link into the online world if we want youngsters to become financially prudent.
Perhaps we need more cross-Solent competition from Isaac Farmbank, Chairman of the Isle of Wight Young Conservatives. I note the many letters and views expressed over the island's connectivity to the mainland. It is all very well endlessly debating and demanding any number of various scatterbrain solutions, but before these grandiose ideas are inflated to an embarrassing level, examine the various likelihoods of options. It is a fantasy to even entertain the idea of nationalisation. Firstly, no sane treasury would take on debt-ridden companies, pay out compensation to shareholders, legislate in Parliament, create a subsidiary company, and so on, when there is insatiable demand on the public purse, not to mention a Goliath deficit. Competition, by contrast, hands power not to politicians, shades of floating bridges, but to consumers. To increase competition, a choice must be extended to islanders. A new ferry company operating the same routes as existing firms would give consumers a real choice, leading to an incentive for all firms to cut prices and provide a better service. Such a company could be created by an island consortium backed by the council, government and share capital. Significant amounts of capital would be required, but would ultimately power economic growth in the Solent area. The development of Sandown Airport, led by the private sector with government backing in order to have regional air capacity, would enable existing regional airline companies to expand services to the island from London and Southampton, again extending choice and incentivising efficiencies, more reliability, new service features and lower prices. Of course, such a brief summary hardly scratches the surface of what would be required, the likelihood of success, etc. There is one thing, however, that can be set up within months: a comprehensive study investigating whether A, the current market structure nature is in the interest of islanders, B, introducing direct route competition is feasible and the options for doing so, C, development of air capacity would be a feasible option to increase competition and power economic growth. If we are to improve the situation, let's not politicise, let's not return to backward thinking, but to look forward to new ideas and new ambitions.
Not too much to ask for reliable ferry service from Councillor Richard Quigley, Chair of Isle of Wight Labour. It's taken me a while to respond to Bob Seeley MP's letter on privatising the ferry companies, as my initial response was to say, "Ya boo, we said that in the 2019 general election and you dismissed it as communist fantasy." But that wouldn't further the debate. I, like most people, got involved in politics to make the island a better place and do the best for the people I represent, regardless of whether they voted for me or not. So assuming Bob didn't vote for me, I know he likes me, but that may be pushing it, my best response is to offer to help Bob improve the ferry services for the benefit of all of us. Nationalisation is a great idea, but without a change of government, it isn't going to happen anytime soon. So where do we start? A service level agreement would be a good place. Reliability, regularity, customer satisfaction are a few of the measures. A ferry users forum that includes stakeholders such as councillors, whose ward has a ferry port, regular commuters, businesses, and individuals whose lives have been impacted by the poor service of late, that meets fortnightly with both CEOs, would be a good way to focus Red Funnel and Whitelink on where their profits come from. Asking them to provide the reliable service we have had in the past isn't a request too far either. These aren't pie-in-the-sky aims. When the government provided the money needed to keep the services running during COVID, they stated it was because the route is deemed an essential service. They can't unsay that. So, Bob, if you're so serious about improving the ferries, let's talk.
And now we go on to Wight memories. And this is Uffa Fox, a friend to the royals and all. Island-born Uffa Fox was back in the news following the death of Prince Philip. They were lifelong friends and sailing companions during past Cowes weeks. Many generations of islanders might not even realise the achievements of this intrepid helmsman and boat designer builder who died back in 1972. For an East Cowes nipper, he achieved remarkable success. Those who went to celebrate his life at the London Memorial Service at St Martin's in the Fields, including Prince Philip, Prince Charles, Princess Anne and Prime Minister Edward Heath, Uffa's innovative dinghy boat designs eventually made sailing possible for working class people. As a racing competitor himself, in 1928 he was virtually unbeatable in his 14-footer Avenger. He had 57 races and won 52, had 2 seconds and 3 thirds. He also won the coveted Prince of Wales Cup. His world-famous airborne lifeboat saved hundreds of lives during the Second World War. Many of these were built on the island. When Eamon Andrews caught him out to appear on TV's This Is Your Life, at the end of the show around 100 servicemen came on to thank him for saving their lives with his unique lifeboats. These boats, which had motors and sails, enabled crewmen to get away from dangerous enemy waters. They were carried under aeroplanes and parachuted down to survivors of ditched aircraft.
Uffa was also known as one of the island's great eccentrics. His stories are legendary. He was always up for a dangerous challenge. Once, for a bet, he climbed up the famous J.S. Wight's crane in Cowes and dived into the Medina from the top of it. When he missed the last floating bridge, as he often did, he would take his clothes off, tie them to his head, and swim across. When he lived at Puccaster near Knighton, every night he would go to the loose box and say good night to his horse Frantic. One evening he had the crazy idea of taking the horse up to see his bedroom. He had problems on the stairs and the weight of the horse didn't do the old house any favours. Uffa was known for his fast driving, and one day the local police set a trap each end of Knighton High Street. Unbeknown to them, his car was still at home and he was riding Frantic on the downs. As they galloped back through Knighton, the horse was spooked by an animal crossing the road. It suddenly speeded up and actually clocked 37 miles per hour. In the end, the police chief decided not to charge Uffa, as it had never happened before in Britain. That disappointed him, as he would love to have created an historical precedent.
On another notorious occasion, Uffa was driving rather fast just as a sergeant and his troops were marching out of Albany Barracks. The sergeant was nearly knocked over. Cowes police were notified and Uffa was charged and he defended himself. He told the judge it was a March day and the troops had their full camouflage uniforms on and therefore he couldn't see them. Apparently he spoke so eloquently that he was found not guilty. When he next saw the Cowes police inspector, he was asked if he was feeling okay on that particular day. It was suggested that if he'd been going at his normal speed, they would never have spotted his number plate. Uffa also loved his cricket and was just a pure slogger. When playing at Northwood Cricket Club, he made the biggest hit ever seen there. From the far end of the ground, he smashed the ball high over the main road, over several trees and into the field, which is now the Isle of Wight Community Club. He also loved playing cricket in the Solent when the Brambles Bank was exposed for a short time. Uffa learned his boat building skills as an apprentice to S.E. Saunders. This was his own innovations eventually led to him to create the new 14-foot sailing dinghy, which became a hit all around the world, as did many of his other designs. Later, the Flying 15 series proved another winner.
When he raced with Prince Philip in Cowes, a boat donated to the Duke by the people of Cowes, and Blue Bottle, they created huge news stories and were pictured in newspapers all around the world. In 2022, from August the 18th to the 21st, there will be an Uffa Fox regatta in Cowes to mark the 50th anniversary of his death. This will be followed from August the 20th to the 26th by the Flying 15 European Championships to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the class. These are still popular today. Uffa, who was awarded a CBE in 1959, also became a media personality. He was even seen on What's My Line, one of the biggest television shows of the period. He also recorded an LP of sea shanties, which featured the Mike Sam Singers and the Ron Goodwin Orchestra. It was produced by George Martin, who went on to success with the Beatles. They even did a live performance at the home of Lord Beaverbrook in front of a very distinguished audience. In the middle of it, Uffa suddenly produced a 15-inch cigar and presented it to Sir Winston Churchill. He told the world-famous statesman, "Here you are, that's for being a good boy." Our Uffa Fox had the unique skill of being able to mix with all types of people. He treated everyone the same, whether they were of royal stock or an unknown local walking the streets of Cowes. He had a cheery word for everyone. My View by Jim Gibbons. There are many shades of religion and belief. Congratulations to Councillor Brodie on stopping the practice of prayers before council meetings, if only temporarily, during his chairmanship. I can't imagine that anyone objects to someone else praying privately, but the believers should not be allowed to rub the atheists' noses in it. I'm sure a room could be allocated for prayers before the meeting. It needn't be a large one. A broom cupboard might do. I'm not an atheist, as you might suppose, but my idea of the person who created us is quite different from the views of the established religions, which range from an all-forgiving Father to someone willing to condemn his creatures to everlasting torture. I envisage the person who created me as some super nerd who, dissatisfied with the world he is in, electronically creates his own universe filled with, well, us. Or perhaps everyone who writes a novel unwittingly creates real characters, us again. The trouble with the prayers that we know is that they do not allow for shades of belief. I imagine an all-seeing God would not be pleased with me if I pretended to a belief that I don't have. I therefore propose this one. O God, if there is a God, please help everybody. I think it would be uncharitable to pray for individuals, implying that everyone else is worthless, but I don't suppose that would be any more popular before council meetings. Should we be concerned about what religions or any other bodies teach their adherents? I think so. Some religions require their disciples to cut bits off their children as a sign of belonging, as the triads were said to cut off a finger. Religions in the past have demanded human sacrifices. The honour killings of today often have a religious element. Should we be concerned about what they are required to teach their children? After all, the religions are incompatible, otherwise they would have merged, and are in a minority. Most of the human race disagrees with what any religious parent teaches his children, often under threats of eternal damnation. Some believe in one God, others many. Some believe it is their right, or even their duty, to convert the others to their thinking. Some believe that if one of their flock leaves, he should be cast out, shunned, or killed. Most cults insist that parents instill their beliefs into their children from birth and dissuade, to put it mildly, any free investigation of other ways of thinking. We do little to protect children from this. We speak of Catholic children rather than children of Catholic parents. I would like to see a law requiring every school and every place of religion to display prominently a notice saying, "You are not a prisoner of your religion. You are free to change your opinions and loyalties, and it is an offence to try to prevent you." Last month I asked who said, "I don't have pet peeves, I have whole kennels of irritation." That was Whoopi Goldberg. Now, who said, in England, there are 60 religions religions and only one source.
And now we have an article by Superintendent Sarah Jackson of Hampshire Constabulary. Praise for the Isle of Wight's new student police officers. We're very fortunate to have recently recruited new officers on the Isle of Wight who are learning the ropes and experiencing the challenges of everyday policing for the first time. I want to focus on them and give you an insight into their first time experience of policing. I will start by highlighting an incident which involved a couple of our student officers and one which demonstrates the diversity of what we face on a daily basis, as well as the important and dynamic decisions that need to be made to protect lives. On the evening of June the 25th, we were called to what appeared on the face of it to be a public order incident in Newport, involving a man behaving aggressively. A police officer, accompanied by two students he was coaching, attended the incident before quickly identifying that the man was displaying symptoms of acute behavioural disturbance, ABD. ABD can prove fatal if not treated urgently. Despite the complex situation and the aggression shown by the man, attending officers, including the two students, treated him as a casualty whilst waiting for an ambulance to arrive and take him to hospital. The coaching officer's experience and professionalism helped ensure the right response was given in this scenario and set an excellent example for the student officers in his charge. I've been privileged enough to receive a testimony directly from one of our student officers about how he's been getting used to the role. The officer in question joined us in January this year and, like many students, has been posted to the island from the mainland. He said, "I've been involved in searching for missing people, domestics in progress and public order incidents in the nighttime economy. There are a lot of unknowns when you're learning on the job, so you find yourself following the lead of your coach, but you gradually take the lead more as you gain experience. The role is exciting, particularly as you're learning live on the job as opposed to a simulated scenario. Your first blue light run is one that will always stick with you, especially if you've never been in a police car before. It's certainly been a challenge, but it's one that I welcome."
What's on? Renowned pianist returns to perform in Freshwater. Renowned pianist Margaret Fingerhut will be returning to Freshwater's Memorial Hall to give 2 recitals later this month. Organised by West Wight Arts Association, the recitals will take place on Saturday, July the 24th at 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. Margaret was the first to perform on the association's Steinway grand piano 25 years ago, and she will now play it again after its refurbishment last year. She will play works by Lennox Berkeley, Beethoven, York Bowen, Chopin and Rachmaninoff in a programme lasting more than an hour. Tickets are £15 each or £2 for students and children from westwightarts.co.uk or Totland Parish Office on 756 028.
A talk by scientist and author Robin McInnes in Ventnor. Coastal scientist and art historian Professor Robin McInnes will present a talk about one of his books at Ventnor Arts Club. Furthest south from the Scottish borders to the Isle of Wight is an elaborately decorated gilt-edged book which explores the history of 2 families from the Scottish borders who become one family through marriage in the 1950s on the island. It describes the lives and works of the McInneses and the Laidlaws, who both played influential roles in the cultural heritage of the region over several generations. The book also details the life and times of the author and how the natural beauties of the island led to a lifetime's interest and involvement in science and art. The talk by the St Lawrence-based author is on Tuesday, July the 20th at 7:30 p.m. Reserve seats at ventnorartsclub.com.
Action is back on the Shale track. Although it has been a testing time for motorsport, especially the co-owners of the Wight Link Warriors Speedway team, there is plenty for fans to be positive about, as Shale track action returns soon to Smallbrook Stadium in Ryde. There will be 7 amateur meetings taking place at the Ryde venue during the summer months. The Isle of Wight Summer Spectacular, organised by Martin Widman, Barry Bishop and former Whitelink Wizard rider Ben Ilsley, supported by a dedicated team of volunteers, will see some fixtures run in a team format, featuring sides from across the UK and including other motorcycle disciplines, such as the 3-round Island Masters individual competition. The action kicks off on July the 22nd with round 1 of the Island Masters, featuring 12 riders in a Grand Prix style event. There will also be Pee-wee bike action, 125cc youth races and Category B 500cc speedway team racing with the Whitelink Wizards. The Whitelink Warriors have planned a bumper, action-packed kick-off meeting with no shortage of entertainment.
And at Shanklin Theatre, we have from the 1st of July to the 4th of November, Spotlight presents Beyond the West End. Shows are every Thursday at 8:15pm, excluding the 21st of October. Socially distanced guidelines apply for July the 1st, 8th and 15th shows, and you can call the box office for tickets. Usual seating from July the 22nd, assuming restrictions are lifted on July the 19th.
Lockdown-inspired art to tour Ireland by Lucy Morgan. Art inspired by being in lockdown is going on tour across the island. Island charity Independent Arts challenged us to express ourselves through photographs, poetry, music, speech, pottery, writing, crafts, inventions, baking, gardening and more. Now, selected pieces from the online version of Looking Out from Lockdown are going on tour. Summer exhibitions will be held in Ryde, Ventnor, Freshwater and Newport from Tuesday until September the 19th. Artists taking part are aged between 7 and 77 years old. Work submitted includes landscape painting, sketches, sculptures, photography and flower arrangements. Independent Arts CEO Lisa Gagliani said, "As a charity committed to supporting people isolated across the island, we felt lockdown was the time to get everyone on side with arts for well-being. The online gallery was really popular, so now we can all venture out. We are delighted to pull the tour together and bring much needed footfall to some of our cherished cafes and other venues. See the tour at Moncton Arts Ride, Tuesday to July the 22nd, Ventnor Fringe, July the 23rd to August the 1st, Freshwater Coffee House, August the 3rd to the 27th, and Independent Arts Creative Hub, Newport, September the 13th to the 19th. On August the 17th, a ticketed event will be held at Medina Bookshop, Cowes, which will combine a selection of pieces and live poetry performances. The project has been run in collaboration with the island's Lord Lieutenant Susie Sheldon. Mrs. Sheldon said, "The response to Looking Out from Lockdown has been a delight, with so many varied contributions from so many islanders. This exhibition gives a taste of the quality and variety of the contributions and celebrates not only the wonderful work done by Independent Arts, but also the amazing resilience and creativity of islanders over the past 16 months.
A free exhibition of 3D model buildings will celebrate the twinning of Ryde and Ramsgate. The towns unofficially twinned to create Ridesgate this summer as part of an imaginative commission by Historic England and creative art and design group Mooch to celebrate the historic coastal towns. Hand-drawn by volunteers, the models will populate a giant map, growing as the exhibition continues. Having opened in Ramsgate already, it will transfer to the former Elizabeth Pack site in Cross Street, Ryde, from July the 17th and is available to view until August the 8th.
Additional news. School runners raised nearly £1,000. Gatton and Lake Primary School Year 6 class embarked upon an epic journey of fitness and resilience to raise funds for Kissy Puppy. The charity, inspired by Sophie Rolfe, who lost her battle with a brain tumour at the age of 6 in 2013, raises money for children's health care on the Isle of Wight. Deputy Head Teacher John Kirby brought the idea to fruition by setting the children a target of completing the NHS Couch to 5K in 9 weeks. As well as Mr Kirby, Year 6 staff members Mrs Davies and Miss Vokins were involved. Mr Kirby said the whole class has shown incredible resilience and determination to succeed, and the improvement in their fitness has been phenomenal. I couldn't be more proud of their achievements and the way they have embraced the challenge. They really are an incredible class, and they're doing it all for an amazing cause. Sophie's story touched the children's heart. Year 6 pupil Tyler said, "I have loved running for this charity. I think it's extremely sad that Sophie passed away, but it makes me happy to raise money for the charity that needs it most." The school raised £977 through justgiving.com fundraising, Gatton and Lake, 25k.
The Isle of Wight supply was not affected. Southern Water has confirmed that Isle of Wight water supplies, which sometimes come from Hampshire's River Test, are not affected by a diesel pollution problem. When needed, 1/3 of the island's water can be piped under the Solent from the utility firm's Testwood Supply Works in Totton. There has been controversy over a fuel leak affecting nearby Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust's Lower Test Nature Reserve. Southern Water says its water plant is in a different part of the river, and it reassured islanders there are currently weeks of water reserves here already, so no need for a transfer from the mainland at the current rate of demand.
Princess Olga presented book about Russian Isle of Wight links at memorial service. Princess Olga Romanov, the great niece of Russia's last Tsar, Nicholas II, visited the island over the weekend. In doing so, she followed in the footsteps of her Russian imperial ancestors, many of whom had strong connections with the island. While at the Romanov family memorial in East Cowes, she met author Stefan Roman, whose book, Isle and Empires, Romanov Russia, Britain and the Isle of Wight, was released earlier this week. The book by Medina Publishing is a fascinating exploration of the many links between Imperial Russia and the island. These date back to 1698, when Tsar Peter the Great recruited his shipbuilders from East Cowes, which culminated in the visit by Tsar Nicholas II and his family to Cowes during the 1909 regatta, a high point in Anglo-Russian relations. Princess Olga expressed her delight at receiving a copy of the book from Stefan. She was intrigued to hear Russian imperial yacht Queen Victoria was built at the J.S. White's Gridiron Yard, East Cowes, in 1847 and set the standard for all future Russian imperial yachts. Director of Medina Publishing, Peter Harrigan, said, "This is the first time the full story of Russia's connections with the island have been so comprehensively explored and revealed. This book is essential reading for anyone who wants to understand the current complex relationship with Russia and how we arrived here. In addition, 2 Russian-themed walks are being launched. The first will follow the footsteps of the Russian imperial family in East Cowes, and the second will explore Russian radical connections with Ventnor. Details of this and other events can be obtained from Medina Bookshop Cowes, where Isle and Empires can be purchased. Information is also available from East Cowes and Ventnor Heritage Centres.
Newchurch Moors Nature Reserve has been recognised as a site of national importance thanks to its population of scarce chaser dragonflies. Located in the Eastern Yar Valley and owned by Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, Newchurch Moors has been listed by the British Dragonfly Society. Priority sites are important areas that support rare and threatened wildlife. Scarce chaser dragonflies, which are typically found in habitats with good water quality and lots of vegetation around water bodies such as ponds or slow-flowing rivers, are considered near threatened. Spotted flying from late April to early August, they are medium in size. Males have a blue and black body and blue eyes, while females are ochre with black markings down the middle of the abdomen. They look similar to some other species of dragonfly, particularly skimmers.
Petition for 20 mile an hour zone. A petition to install 20 mile an hour speed limits in Bryston will still be presented to the Isle of Wight Council, despite a councillor saying that it would not be determined until at least the end of the year. A campaign started in the village has attracted nearly 290 signatures, including those of the local councillor and Island MP, to reduce the speed limits on the main road, Moortown Lane, Upper Lane and North Street. Villagers Graham and Christine Robinson revived efforts to introduce the lower speed limits following on from efforts by Bryston Parish Councillor.
Bad timing for blackout. More than 80 postcode areas in the West Wight were affected by a power cut on Saturday night, just as England were playing in the Euro 2020 quarter-finals. People in 85 postcodes in some PO30 and PO41 areas lost power just after 9 p.m. SSEN apologised and restored the power by midnight. Let's hope it doesn't happen on Sunday. And it's goodbye from Pauline.
And goodbye from Francis.
This week's In Touch programme is as follows. Wheelie bins and becoming a new parent. Fern Lulham sits in for Peter Wight. Wheelie bins pose yet another potential obstacle for blind and visually impaired people when navigating pavements. North West Leicester City Council will potentially be able to impose fines to people who leave their wheelie bin on the pavement after bin day. Residents could be liable if there is an accident due to the obstruction. They've recently launched a consultation exercise that will ask local residents about their thoughts on how to pave their way to a solution. We speak with North West Leicester City Council's Head of Community Services, Paul Sanders, on this. Becoming a parent can be both a scary and incredibly exciting experience, especially if you are blind or have a visual impairment. We hear the experiences of some new parents, from when they were expecting, from what it is like now they have their little bundles of joy. Are you thinking of having children? We offer some advice from Kate Crofts from Blind Parents UK. And just to say, there is no scaffolding news this week.
About everything that you possibly think you'll need to know, and then you walk through the front door and you're like, I've got this small little human, what do I do now?
We talk to people who have recently become parents for the first time to hear their stories. But first, navigating pavements when you have little or no sight can be difficult at the best of times. Badly parked cars and street furniture often grab the headlines, but for many of us, bin collection days are even worse, with an endless stream of bins making the pavement seem more like an obstacle course. But now, North West Leicestershire Council has launched a consultation exercise so that local residents can have their say on how they might pave their way to a solution. Well, we wanted to find out more about this, so I caught up with the Head of Community Services at North West Leicestershire Council, Paul Sanders, and I started by asking him what had led the council to launch the consultation exercise.
A lot of the residents leave their bins out, sometimes for days on end, on the pavements. We've been receiving over the last 3, maybe 4 years, loads and loads of complaints from people that find it very difficult to get around these bins, and often from people who are disabled, in wheelchairs, find it difficult to walk and often get pushed out onto the main road. We basically did a bit of a survey in terms of how many bins were left on the streets, and it seemed like over a 3-week period, about 127 bins were just left out for 1, 2, 3, 4 days. We put letters into every household. The idea is that they put their bins out between certain times and put them away between certain times.
But of course, we know it can be the refuse crews themselves who are the guilty party at times. So what instructions do you give them, and what happens if they don't comply?
Crews will put them back in the place where our residents place them. And generally, if they're not in a good place, we ask them to sort of make them a bit tidier and make sure they're considerate of other path and road users, etc. But obviously, if we have complaints, then we do have a word with the crews, and sometimes this can be a disciplinary, but we do train them and give them learning to make sure that they put the bins back nice and neatly and promote that good practice.
What options might you consider to solve the problem once the consultation exercise is complete?
In the notice that people got, we said put them away by 9 o'clock, but we're actually looking at perhaps asking people to put them away a bit later, maybe midnight, so people have a chance to get home from work, etc. So I think we're trying to be a bit flexible, and that's really been the main comment we've had back. And obviously, if people do get some sort of fine, if it rolls out, people can present cases. So it's not a cut and dry process, but it does make sure that we can crack down on those people that are really spoiling it for the rest.
Well, we await the outcome of the consultation exercise with interest, and someone who we think might be particularly interested is Dan Gumbrell. Dan is blind and a self-confessed veteran of battles with bins. I met him for a walk through his hometown of Bexhill with his guide dog Reggie. Dan, we're coming up to a bin, I think, so let's see what Reggie does.
Yeah. Straight on. Come on then. Straight on. So he has stopped. I'm sticking my hand out to see what's in front of me. Mm-hmm. And there's no way around that. So Reggie is having to go on the road now around this bin. And that's quite a bit of a bump there as well. So there's no way of getting around it.
So stepping off the curb into the road.
Yeah.
Nancy stepped off the curb into the road as well. Get back on. Oh, there's a car coming now. So we've now got back onto the pavement.
Yeah. And we'll wait for it to go past. It's very disorientating, first of all. I remember sort of veering off down people's drives because of bins, you know, walking into them and not knowing where I was, using a cane and with my guide dog.
You've currently got your lovely guide dog Reggie now. Which would you say is harder to navigate bins with? Is it a cane or is it a guide dog?
Certainly a cane. Using a cane was a lot more difficult. I remember when I was walking and I was in a bit of a rush to try and catch a bus. And I remember there was a line of about 3 or 4 bins, all empty. And I was navigating with my cane, moving quite fast, and knocked into a bin. It knocked over and then knocked into the next bin. It was a bit like dominoes. And, I think I did actually fall over.
How did that make you feel?
It always feels like, everyone's watching you and incredibly embarrassing. Just had to get up, brush myself off and carry on, really.
And is this only a problem on bin collection day?
Locally, I know that the bins are left out on a Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. So that is the majority days of the week. Yeah. So there was a bin left right in the middle of the pavement that me and Reggie had to navigate past. Reggie took me up on the grass, fell off the pavement side as well onto the road, a real obstruction right in the middle of the pavement there, and difficult for Reggie to navigate past. They've got a driveway and space to be able to move their bin into. Sometimes it's just lazy, the fact that they're leaving their bins right in the middle there, and no thought for anyone else who might be walking past.
Do you ever have problems with bags of rubbish where bins aren't provided?
There has been a few, and the seagulls get them, rip them up, and there's rubbish all over the street. So I have had that with Reggie before, and that can be very distracting for him.
What do you think could be done to improve this situation, Dan?
I think perhaps teaching local bin men and local residents in the communities about the problems that arise by leaving bins out in awkward places. And I think it is education. A few of our neighbours, they obviously all know that I've got a guide dog. They, I must say, have been very good in terms of moving their bins onto their drives straight away, because I quite regularly walk past there with Reggie and used to do with a cane as well. I used to bash their bins with my cane. So I think that's how they knew. And now, without me having to say anything, they quite regularly move their bins into their drives out of the way of the pavement.
That's Dan Gumbrell. So what can you do if bins are a problem in your area? Well, RNIB have produced guidance aptly titled "Who Put That There?" and their senior legal advisor Samantha Fothergill joins me now. Samantha, we've just heard from Dan about the considerable problems that bins can cause visually impaired people. What does the law say about bins being left on pavements?
Well, the law doesn't say anything precise about bins, but what it does say is that the councils have a duty to keep the highways free from obstruction, and highways include footpaths and footways. So the councils are under a duty to keep it clear, and it's also potentially a breach of the Equality Act, because it's sort of councils' policies that are effectively, ensuring that obstructions are all over the pavement.
And for some people, the issue seems to be more about how long the bins are left on the pavement for. But to be honest, as a blind person, wherever possible, I'd rather they just weren't there at all, Samantha. Is that a reasonable expectation as far as the law is concerned?
I think so, because the council are supposed to keep the footways clear of obstruction. And so bins should just not be on the pavement unless there's absolutely no other option. You know, they should be looking at what alternatives. People should be keeping them in their front gardens. They should have more regular collections if, it's necessary to just have bin bags out to avoid the bins going there. So the council should be thinking creatively about what they can do to just take the bins off the pavements completely. But if they can't take the bins off the pavement completely, then they absolutely have to ensure that they are kept in places that are, regular, so they're up against the wall, they're not in the middle of pavements, and definitely not where there's not enough pavement and people are being forced onto the road.
And so far, Samantha, we've spoken in legal terms, but short of taking legal action, what's your advice to people whose pavements are being obstructed by bins?
Well, I think the first thing to do is to complain to the local council, to the refuse teams, to the greener council teams are usually some of the people responsible, and ask them to take steps to remedy it. You should always point out that they have this duty to keep the highway free from obstruction, that you feel that you're being discriminated, and see what that does. You can also make a complaint to your local councillor about the situation. And there's also lots of local groups that you can complain to, maybe local societies. You might have a local living streets group that are interested. So there's lots of options, and obviously legal action is always going to be the last option, but it's there. It's a tool in your armoury. And it probably is worth saying that actually, although there's very little case law on Equality Act generally, a long, long time ago, in the days of the DDA, there was actually a case about bin bags on pavements where a wheelchair user had effectively got stuck in his house because the council had piled up bin bags near him. So, the law is there to be used, but obviously, a last resort, make sure that you complain to your council, and if they don't remedy it, think about legal action.
Samantha Fothergill, thank you very much for your time. Well, do let us know if you're having problems with bins and if you or your council are taking action to solve them. I'll give you our contact details at the end of the programme. Now, recently on our genetics special, we touched on how genetic testing may or may not play a role in deciding to become a parent if you're blind. But what is blind parenthood actually like in practice? Well, to throw some light on this subject, I'm joined by Kate Crofts, Lead for Policy and Communications at Blind Parents UK, which is a support group for blind and visually impaired parents, Louise Muir, who is severely sight impaired and mum to 9-month-old Edith, and Katie and Jeremy, parents to 6-month-old Jaden. Katie is blind and Jeremy is visually impaired. Katie, I'd like to come to you first. I think most people wonder if they'll be able to cope when they're thinking about having a baby, and definitely as a blind woman myself who'd love to start a family at some point, there are particular things that worry me about it. So what were some of your biggest fears about becoming a parent, Katie?
Absolutely everything. Initially changing nappies, feeding him, making sure that he's safe, and also for the future, like, because there's quite a lot of things that I want to do with him. Like, I want to take him to the park, I want to be able to take him to the seaside and things like that, and I worry about how I'm going to do that if I ever want to do stuff on my own, because I'm not very independent myself, especially going to unfamiliar places. So I worry about being able to do those kind of things with him, because I want him to have the best childhood ever.
And Louise, what about you? Did you have similar concerns?
As a prospective parent, I was very apprehensive. There's a lot to take on board. There's a lot to think about, both as someone with sight loss, but also just the general thing of introducing a baby into your family, you know, taking that responsibility. And however prepared you might think you are, when the reality of having that baby in your arms, it's definitely not the same as what the book reads or the antenatal classes prepare you for. And the questions of, am I doing that right? Am I doing that wrong? What's the best thing to do right now? What does this baby need?
And Katie, does Louise's experience resonate with you, or did you have a different experience?
Similar, because of Jaden's medical conditions, and also because, as I say, I'm not very independent. We spent a long time in hospital. My partner Jeremy, who's here, he does quite a lot of, like, apart from feeding, because I breastfeed Jaden, when we haven't got support, he does pretty much everything else.
You're quite a hands-on dad then, Jeremy, do you think?
I think I pretty much had to hit the ground running. I mean, you've got all the things like changing nappies. I enjoy doing it, weirdly, and I enjoy giving him a bath and taking care, pick him up. He's in my arms, and because of his conditions, I have to spend more time with him, because I never thought I'd be measuring medicine and things like that in syringes and stuff in the morning. It's very involved now, and because his development is a little bit behind, I'm having to do more tummy time and putting him on me, so I'm leaning back and he's trying to look up. I feel like a very much hands-on dad, and it was scary. I mean, I had 24 hours to suddenly just become a full-on parent dad, and it was like, I'm so glad I did it, and, you know, I love him to bits. Like, I wouldn't change it for the world.
One of my main fears when thinking about looking after a young baby is, of course, for most people, when things go wrong. Louise, how do you know when, for example, if your baby isn't well?
This was a concern I had before I had a baby. You can tell. So there's the element of their behaviour. Has their behaviour changed? Has their temperament changed? Are they quiet or are they crying more? There's these signs that you can start to look out for. You get to know your baby, and then you get to know when something's out of sorts, and then you go down the route of questioning that. Why is that happening?
Mm-hmm. One thing I was going to say, Jaden had hydrocephalus, and
which is water on the brain. And we did everything we can with the medical profession. We saw a doctor, we had advice from some leading people, and some things you have to, I mean, I trusted Katie's instinct on that. You have to trust your instinct, because he was blue lighted to hospital, and, you know, he was very seriously ill. So, but that is because Katie, his cries were different, and he wasn't, because obviously I'm feeding him, like, he's usually a very hungry little boy, and he wasn't feeding so much. He was either just doing this really weird high-pitched cry or just sleeping, and I was like, no, because normally he's like really giggly with Jeremy, and, you know.
That stopped. So trust your instincts.
Yes.
That's the first rule, I would say.
Yeah, definitely trust. If you think something's wrong, it more than likely is.
And I suppose trusting your instincts to a certain degree comes down to confidence. And of course, regardless of how capable you might feel, other people might question your abilities sometimes. Have any of you come across any negative attitudes like that?
That you do have a feeling that you're labelled when you've got a visual impairment or disability, that you may be not 100% with your child. That felt that way before we even had Jaden. But soon after, they got the idea that we're probably more on it. Because we've had so many medical things to deal with, we've really hit the ground running with Jaden. And, you know, he's a happy, very happy, cheerful little child.
Once people see him. But most of the time, when he's not in pain or whatever, or hungry, he is an incredibly happy little boy.
And everyone sees that.
I want to turn now to Kate Crofts from Blind Parents UK. So, Kate, in your experience, what kind of things do visually impaired parents ask for support with most often?
Oh, yes. Bottle preparation. We've actually got fact sheets and videos and things. The classic how to hold a baby. You've already covered some of it with the others. Bathing, getting out and about, how to use different mobility aids as well as transporting a baby. So we have specialists in using different slings and ways of carrying babies, and in different types of buggies that can be pulled whilst you're using a guide dog or a long cane. And then the practicalities of safety in the home.
And it strikes me that it can so often simply be confidence in our own abilities which makes us doubt ourselves. Is that something that you can offer support with?
Entirely, yes. So there is an emotional and well-being element to the work that we do, and that includes the positive messaging and giving people the confidence. Katie's talked about not feeling as independent as she'd like to be. I would like to think with an ongoing connection to us in Blind Parents UK, we can help with that. Both, enabling you to talk to others and hear how they have become more confident, but also hearing that we've all had disasters and we've all had knocks of confidence, and that's okay.
Good to know that you're not the only one with nightmare nappies either, isn't it? And finally, I'd just like to ask each of you, what would you say to any blind or partially sighted person, much like myself, thinking about starting a family, but wondering if they'll be able to cope? And Kate, I'll start with you.
I actually started my journey earlier than I anticipated doing because I had a re-diagnosis, and I thought I've got to have my babies while I can still see a bit because I'm scared I won't be able to do it if I lose all of my sight. And I was so wrong. In fact, if anything, when I stopped trying to do my parenting as a person with some sight and got on with using my other skills, I got better at it. So I would say, don't prejudge yourself. Think about the things that are important to you, your values in life. And if you want to create a new life where you impart those values to another, go for it.
Katie and Jeremy, what advice would you give?
Mine would be ask for help. Do not be afraid, because sometimes I feel like I should be able to do this on my own, but you can't always. I need to listen to my own advice sometimes.
Jeremy?
You have to be prepared to put the time in. You have to say this child comes first, and that's it. Having a child is the most rewarding thing. When you smile at your child and they smile back or they giggle at you, there is nothing else like it in the world.
And last but not least, Louise, your advice, please.
I tried to identify everything that I would need to be prepared for, so every possible eventuality and problem before I became a parent, or before we were even, trying to decide if we wanted to start a family or not. And I soon became overwhelmed by that. And when I stopped trying to overthink it, it became a lot easier. And I think it is, do you want to start a family or don't you? That's the core question, really.
Overthinking is something I can definitely relate to. Katie, Jeremy, Louise and Kate, thank you all very much indeed. That's all for this week. Do send us your views on anything you heard on this or any previous programmes. You can email intouch@bbc.co.uk and you can leave a message on 0161 836 1338 or go to our website bbc.co.uk/intouch, from where you can get more information or download tonight's and many past editions of the programme. From me, Fern Lulham, producer Beth Hemmings and studio managers John Cole and Chris Hardman, goodbye.